Welcome to Crochet After Dark, podcast episode number 6. If you're new here, my name's April, and on this podcast, I love to talk about all things crochet related, from patterns, yarns, and especially to show you my finished objects and works in progress. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. In fact, for my returning viewers, you may have noticed that I haven't published anything on this channel in a little over a month. And unfortunately, the reason for that is I did have some medical issues last month. On the beginning of the month, I wasn't feeling great. And then on June 7th, I actually decided to go to urgent care. And they did admit me. I wound up having to have surgery the following morning. And that surgery didn't go well. And so I had to stay an extra night where normally it's a same day surgery. And then was released home and just felt like I got hit by a truck. So I've really taken the last couple of weeks to recover and kind of rejuvenate. And while I still have a little soreness, pretty much everything's back to normal. So hopefully we can get some of these videos going and I can clear out some of the backlog. And most importantly, I've finally been able to pick up the crochet hook again and get some stuff finished. So let's have a look at my finished objects. So for today, I have two finished objects to show you. The first one is this rectangular shawl. I did finally get this completed. This is using Lion brand mandala yarn, the sequins yarn in the colorway Alexandrite. And it's using a vintage stitch pattern, which you can see has some really nice texture to it. It's double-sided, which is great, so it doesn't matter which way you wear it. And it worked up really beautifully. It's kind of got a nice lace to it, but it's still, you know, big enough and nice enough that it has some warmth as well. I did just now film a video of me showing this to you kind of full length, and so I'll post that in here. But it worked up really great. I do actually have the tutorial for this one already finished, and all I was waiting for was to get some footage of the finished project. So hopefully I'll be able to use the footage that I shot earlier today of me wearing it and combine that with the tutorial that I already filmed. So this should be the next tutorial up, just because I've got so much of it already done. But this was really fun to work on, and I think it took 4 or 5 balls of the Alexandrite. I'm gonna have to weigh it and just to double check. In the midst of all of my health stuff, a lot of my stuff got reorganized. I had a friend of mine, her daughter came in and cleaned my house for me, so it was great. But I gotta find some of those labels. So the second one is this one that you guys have been kind of following along as it's been getting bigger and bigger. And this is my corner to corner chevron. Now I'm going to show you half of it here, but just like with the shawl, I did film a video so that you can see the whole thing. And this, I actually think you could work it up 2 different ways, but the way that I did it was I worked it in panels, so half at a time. So even though you kind of see this diamond here at the bottom, let's see it. It was actually kind of worked where it's hard to show you, but split right up the middle. And then I used the join as you go method to join the 2 panels together. And I really liked that because it kind of made the blanket to where I only had to carry around, you know, half of the width at a time until it got to the length that I needed it. And then for the first panel, but then as I added the second panel, obviously I had to work on both sides at the same time to use the join as you go method. But this was really fun to work on. I've got to get a tutorial filmed for this, and again, try to calculate how much I used. I think I used 2 skeins of the mandala ombre yarn in the colorway Chi, and then the contrasting white color is Lion brand basic stitch. And I'm gonna have to look for my labels to see how much I used of that. And for the border, I just wanted it to be kind of a simple border. I didn't want it to detract from the blanket at all, so I just used a single crochet and then 1 row of half double crochet. So that came out really nicely. I'm glad to have it done. It's a beautiful blanket. Probably one of the favorite ones I've made so far, just because of the way that it moves and the texture. So. But those are my finished objects. Let's have a look at my whips. The first whip I have to show you is So all of these whips are ones that I've actually worked on since the last podcast episode. So while I have more whips than this, these are ones that I have been working on. The first one up is this double triple ripple blanket that I'm making as a gift. And this is in a camo color. So I don't know if you can see, but I chose the double triple ripple pattern because of the texture. There we go. To kind of just, again, you know, if you saw my last whip video on this, it kind of reminds me of the camo netting that the military uses, or like if, you know, you hunt or whatever, you might use something like that. But just been working on it slowly but surely. It's really fun to work on. I do already have a video tutorial posted for this on the channel, so I'll link it below. And if I remember, I'll put a card up on one of these corners that goes to it. But it's a really fun pattern to work on. Hey there, if you haven't done so already, I wanted to remind you to please hit that like button if you're enjoying this content so far. Doing that really does help my channel grow so that more crocheters around the world can see the content that I'm creating. So while I was kind of convalescing and just taking care of myself and resting, I did work a lot on this vintage baby blanket pattern. So the last time you saw this one, I was still just working on these individual white panels, and I've gotten much further along now. So this is using an old pattern I found, I think maybe from the 1850s or 1900s. So translating it's been a little bit fun because they didn't say pattern, you know, they didn't use the same terminology we used back then. But it's got this puff stitch, and I did a poll on the community tab what color I should use for the accent, and the one you guys all voted on was for gray. That one came out to be the winner. So this is actually getting really close to being done. The next step for me is to add these puff stitches along the top and go all the way around with the puff stitches. And then the pattern does actually have a kind of gray and white edging. So a little bit of a gray section, a lacy section that looks really pretty, and then a white border. The border looks fairly complicated, so that's going to be interesting to figure out. One of the things I'm going to have to look at is it's kind of a wide lacy border, so it kind of looks like I don't know, the top of a church or a mosque. And it's really pretty, but I'm concerned that I'm going to have to count the number of stitches and figure out the multiples for that, just to make sure that I can get all the way across without, because it's so wide, without having one cut off in the middle. So it looks fairly complicated. We'll see what I wind up doing, but that's really nice. And I just used Pound of Love for this, and then Big Twist is the gray accent color. So we're getting there. Let's look at the next whip, which is the same vintage pattern, but instead of working it in panels, I worked it all up as one big piece. So this one uses the, this is the label here. This is the Karen Cinnamon Swirl Cakes, and the colorway for this one is Springtime. This color turned out absolutely beautiful. Again, I have to double check how many skeins I used, but I believe it was 3. And you know, when I was working with the Karen, one of the things as I would switch skeins, or even sometimes in the middle of a cake, skein cake, these are in cakes, but even sometimes in the middle of a cake, it would kind of, the yarn would be cut and then knotted together, and it would break the colorway. So at first I was kind of obsessing a little bit over making sure the color changes stayed the same, and then I realized it doesn't matter. The only one who's going to know that it changed is somebody who's really into crochet, and it's probably not going to be the recipient of the blanket. So it does change colors kind of funky in a few places. I think actually down here you may be able to see it a little bit, but overall it worked up really nice. I love the texture that this stitch creates, and on this colorway you can kind of see, and I'm trying to figure out a name for this stitch, but I'm thinking of calling it the sprinkle stitch, just because of the way when you use a multicolored yarn, it kind of looks like little sprinkles. I don't know if you can see that, but it's really pretty. I love it. So all that's left on this one is to create a border. I think on this one I might do popcorn stitches around, and then I have to pick an accent color as well, so 1 or 2 colors to make the border up. This blanket has some really pretty peaches and lavenders, purples, yellow. I'd really love your feedback. What color or colors do you think that I should use for the border for this blanket? Let me know in the comments below. Next up, we have a very simple corner to corner blanket. If you've watched any of my other podcasts, you know that I really love to have at least one corner to corner blanket project going at any one time. This one is a really simple one, and it's been on the hook for a while. I think this is a Karen cotton cake, and I'm not sure the colorway at the moment, but I can look it up and put it in the description. But this is just one that I work on as I have time. This is one complete cake already, and then I've started a second cake. Now I only have 3 cakes of this colorway, so what I'm going to try to do is work through half or a little bit more than half of this cake by weight. So I'll just weigh it when I think I'm getting down to about half, and then start decreasing. So I'm not quite sure how big this blanket will turn out, but so far it's working up nicely, and I love the rainbow colors. The last whip I have to show you is actually more like, well, I mean, I guess it's a whip, but it's a granny square project. So these are all Lion Brand Heartland yarns, and there's six different colors here. So there's a dark brown, I don't have a lot of these yet, and then a gold, and then we have a dark pink and a light pink. I don't know if you can kind of see the difference there. And then we have a dark blue and more of like a tealy green color. So these are all going to be joined, and I think I got like a light gray yarn or maybe a taupe or beige yarn. I do already have the contrasting color for this. Originally I wanted to do like an ecru or an off-white for it, but at the time, but all of the yarn sites, I couldn't find it in the Heartland yarn, and I was a little bit worried about mixing yarn brands. I actually think Karen Simply Soft could have worked for it, but I wound up finding a nice neutral in the same Heartland line, and we'll get these all joined together. I think in total there's going to be over 200 squares, so there's like almost 100 or maybe 90 of these colored squares, and then there's going to be the same amount of the solid color, but I'm going to use the join as you go method when I start creating those solid colors. So the way that it'll go, I have it graphed and all laid out. It's gonna go, you know, one color and then the neutral and then another color. And the good news about this one is I already have the pattern for it mostly written. Because it's granny squares, I made up a whole chart and what colors I used and the placement, as well as different sizing options. So I'll have that ready to go for you guys once this blanket's finished. That being said, it's going to take me a while to get through it. So in the coming weeks, I do have a couple of fun projects planned. Since I had 2 projects completed, I do plan on starting new projects, and I already know what they're going to be. I have 2 of these pillow forms that did have covers, but unfortunately, I mean, they were kind of old and dirty anyway, but I had a drain from my surgery, and when they removed it, I had a little bit of unanticipated bleeding, and it got all over the old pillow covers that I had. So I'm going to be crocheting up some new pillow covers for these. I have 2 of the cases. I have 2 pillow forms like this, and they're my favorite pillows. They're so comfy. I love having them on the couch. So this will give me the opportunity to kind of create some smaller, simpler projects, as well as create a pillow cover, which I have never done before. So that'll be fun. I mean, it's going to be easy, right? But it's still going to be fun. But aside from that, even though I really want to, I'm probably not going to start any new projects, at least not this week. I do want to get some of these other ones finished up, get some ends weaved in. I still have this rainbow blanket back here that I've been slowly working on weaving in the ends so I can add a ruffle border to that and get it finished up. But yeah, just kind of getting back into the swing of things. Gonna try to get a couple of tutorials posted this week for you guys. And let me know in the comments, is there anything you'd love to see? Any feedback on any of the projects that I've shown you today? I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep calm and crochet on.